After World War II, the first use of it outside of anything military was the Saab 9.2, and Saab put their engine into their car transversely and beat Mini to the punch. And that's why now the Saab 9.2 is the most No, never mind. That's not the case. Hello and welcome to the Car Nerd Talks. I'm Jason Hassett, the Car Nerd, and today I'm going to be talking to you about an incredibly exciting, or boring, depending on your perspective on things, or if you're James May, again, it's incredibly exciting. I'm going to be talking about a topic that's a little bit less about one particular car and a little bit more about a trend in cars, and that is the transversely mounted engine. If you don't know what that is, definitely stay tuned and watch. If you do know what it is, feel free to go, but I'd like if you liked and subscribed, that'd be cool. So just a quick bit of housekeeping. Tomorrow, Saturday, we're going to be launching the Car Nerd Talks podcast, and I've got three awesome people, car journalists from drivetribe.com, joining me, who are going to be talking about a mixture of things, past, present and future, and that's going to be cool. If you want to watch that, subscribe to the channel so you get a notification when that goes live tomorrow. And don't forget to join us on the audio version as well, which is going to be on Spotify, Stitcher and all basically good places where you download your podcasts. You can go now to Spotify or any of these and subscribe so you can listen to it as soon as it comes out, and I'd appreciate it if you did that. So without further ado, let's jump into this. If you have a modern front wheel drive car, the likelihood is that the engine is transversely mounted, and what I mean by that is it runs sideways and directly drives the wheels. Unlike if you have a rear wheel drive car or something bigger like my old Chevrolet truck, where it's longitudinally mounted. And this was the norm up until around the 50s and early 60s. Basically, the engine was mounted this way, the transaxle and transmission ran through the center of the car and drove the back wheels, and that was just normal. Longitudinal engines were the norm until Alec Issigonis produced the Mini Cooper for British Motorworks in the 50s. But it wasn't the first car to use the transverse mounted engine. So the first ever car to have this engine was a Critchley Like Car, and this was built by Daimler Company in Coventry. Essentially what happened is Coventry was a place where Daimler had a plant, and they would outsource a lot of their manufacturing for England and for the United Kingdom to that plant. And these guys would put together the cars for them and sell them from there, obviously. However, in 1899, Daimler had a 4 horsepower engine which was not popular at all, and they had 50 of them still left in stock that they couldn't do anything with. It wouldn't go in any of their cars, and no one really wanted it. There wasn't much of a margin for people to buy this. So basically what they did was they shipped the engine to Coventry and said, here, use these to build something cheap that you can sell in England. So that's what they did. They put together the Critchley Like Car with this 4 horsepower 1100cc 2-stroke engine, and it became the Critchley Like Car. They mounted the engine at the back and they used it to drive the rear wheels directly, and this was the first of the transverse engine mountings. The car was really terrible. They made 50 of them, and to tension the engine to make it go faster or slower, literally the engine would move back and forth to tension a belt. That's how simple it was, but that was the first ever use of a transverse engine mounting. There wouldn't be a popular car that used this design until 1931 with the DKW F1. And the DKW F1 had a front-mounted engine. It was 600cc and produced 15 horsepower, a massive amount more than the Critchley Like Car in 1899. This car was fitted with a front-wheel drive, transversely mounted engine at the front, and they produced 4,000 of these during its lifetime. Now, if you haven't heard of DKW, you technically have and you haven't, because DKW would go on to be Auto Union, and now you're probably thinking, what the hell is Auto Union? Auto Union went on to be Audi. So this was the first popular use of this car, like I said, selling 4,000 of them. The first time a transverse engine was used to save space in the cabin, however, was during World War II, when there was a massive need for armoured trucks. And the Soviet Union decided that this was the best way to save space inside the armoured trucks, keep them light, keep them moving. Front wheel drive, as you know, these days is better for handling in certain situations. Rear wheel drive is more fun and definitely gives you a bit more of a push feel instead of a pulling along. But the Soviet Union needed something on the snow and needed an armoured truck that was light, could fit quite a few people, and the transverse engine just made sense in that point. So that's where they used it for the same way that Alec Issigonis wanted, which is to save space inside the cabin while still giving that sporty feel and a little bit of drive. After World War II, the first use of it outside of anything military was the Saab 9.2, and Saab put their engine into their car transversely and beat Mini to the punch. And that's why now the Saab 9.2 is the most famous. No, never mind. That's not the case. But the Saab 9.2 did use this configuration of engine for the same reason, to save space inside the cabin and give it a little bit more traction in the snow. So in the 50s, as I talk about in another video, which you can see up here, about the Mini Cooper, or Mini as it was known, I always call it the Mini Cooper because I'm an idiot. Basically, British Motor Company and its president, Leonard Lord, hated all of these new bubble cars that were coming out. Basically, it was a bit of an oil crisis and people were looking for more economic cars that were cheaper to run, easier to maintain, and that kind of thing. And this is a period where you saw the BMW Isetta and the Fiat 500, and Leonard Lord hated these cars. He wanted the British Motor Company to produce something better, a more functional small car, and he set this task to Alec Issigonis in 1955. It would be another few years before this came out. I believe it was 1959 that it was originally announced and released to the public, but it was being worked on from 1955, and Alec Issigonis wanted to keep as much space inside the car as possible. So they wanted to create a car that was as small as a bubble car but as useful as a regular size car, and this was a tall order. So they looked at a lot of different ways of doing this, and Alec Issigonis basically decided that the only way to actually power this car was with a transverse front-wheel drive motor. And that's what they did. They took the 848cc engine, that four-cylinder engine that British Motor Company had just lying around its parts bin, but instead they mounted the transmission and gearbox basically inside the engine sump, which was a first. And this had the dramatic effect of moving all of the transmission and drive for the car to the front, and it only used 20% of the entire capacity of the car, which left plenty of space to seat 4 people and keep your luggage in the back. And this car was the one that went wildly popular. They didn't expect to sell as many as they did, and as you know, the Mini Cooper, or Mini as most people call it, except unless it's actually a Mini Cooper, went on to be a massively famous car, running from 1959 to 2000, even though the British Motor Company wanted to replace it in 1977 but couldn't. And nowadays, all of the front-wheel drive small hatchback cars, and to be honest, most front-wheel drive cars in general, have a transverse engine. So if you go out now and you have a look at the front of your car, you'll probably notice that it runs this way across, and you'll mount the spark plugs this way across instead of this way across like I did on my Chevy, which was a 6-cylinder longitudinal engine. And now you know that. And that's what makes things like this interesting. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to tune into the podcast tomorrow, and don't forget to go on Spotify, look up the Car Nerd Talks, and subscribe to our new podcast. I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a fun group of people talking about a fun group of topics, and I think you'll really enjoy it. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, because I'd really appreciate that as well, because it lets me do this more, or at least lets me get away with doing this more. And also, don't forget to check out Drive Tribe. I'll put it out in the description, where I spoke about this whole conversation at length and a little bit better prepared, if I'm honest. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.